Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to be opening this debate on the rejection of new nuclear power plants in Scotland and the Scottish Government's commitment to renewable energy. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to set out to Parliament the Scottish Government's continued opposition to new nuclear, while illustrating the exceptional opportunity that clean renewable energy presents for Scotland's economy and energy security. I will, at the outset, take the opportunity to reiterate the Scottish Government's position that we do not support the building of any new nuclear power stations in Scotland. Instead, our focus must be on accelerating the deployment of renewable technologies. Simply, renewables are safer, cheaper, faster to deploy and better for jobs than nuclear. Now, nuclear generation has gone on in Scotland for some time, but for the future we have better sustainable options due to advances in renewables technology. The people who have staffed nuclear fission stations in Scotland and continue to do so in Torness have played a vital role in keeping Scotland's lights on, and I thank them for that. The contribution of nuclear and electricity generation in Scotland is decreasing, however, and will continue to do so. The generation of electricity from nuclear fission presents a number of challenges. Not least, the nuclear generation creates a legacy of radioactive waste, which will have to be managed for thousands of years, requiring complex and robust management to ensure the protection of both people and the environment. Cleaning up Scotland's existing nuclear sites safely and securely is extremely expensive and will take many decades. In particular, I personally feel that hydro has been a very overlooked generator in the past. If you look at neighbouring countries to us, particularly in Norway, who have placed a great deal of importance on hydro, they are very energy secure in a way that other countries aren't. So I would say that we have to look at, but that doesn't mean a wholesale acceptance of all the technologies out there. And I'm setting out the Scottish Government's vision in relation to new nuclear.
The Minister, will the Cabinet Secretary give way?
Yes, I will. And then I'll
Kevin Stewart.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for giving way. I would like to see much more emphasis on hydrogen, as the Cabinet Secretary well knows. Scotland has a great boon when it comes to hydrogen production from renewables. Does the Cabinet Secretary see hydrogen as a major way forward as baseload?
Cabinet Secretary, give the time back for the intervention. I
think that hydrogen is going to have many uses, not least in the decarbonisation of transport and heavy goods vehicles in particular, and in industrial decarbonisation as well. Kevin Stewart is right to point to it, or potentially as even an energy source for domestic use as well. He'll be familiar with the 100 programme, the H100 programme in Fife, which the First Minister officially opened, which is actually trialling the use of hydrogen in a domestic setting as well. And I don't think we should be ruling anything out. We don't know what's going to happen in future with regard to technologies. But anyway, I'm going to continue with my speech, Presiding Officer, if that's okay. As well as the creation of a dangerous and long-lasting waste legacy of radioactive waste legacy, we cannot discuss nuclear power without reference to its capacity to cause catastrophic damage through accidents and malfunction. We have been lucky in Scotland that that has not happened, but it has got a tainted safety history with terrible incidents occurring at Chernobyl and more recently, of course, in Fukushima in Japan. Developing new clean energy systems for the future, we have a moral imperative to ensure the system does not have the ability to threaten the existence of any population or the environment we depend on. And as long as serious environmental concerns, the Scottish Government is wholly unconvinced by the economic argument for the development of new nuclear. The construction of new nuclear power stations is hugely expensive and would inevitably lead to a further increase in consumer energy bills. Take the case of Hinkley Point C. When given the green light by the UK Government, it was due to be completed by 2025 at a cost of £18 billion. And last month, ADF estimated that the project may not be completed until 2031 at a cost of up to £46 billion. More than 2.5 times the original cost estimate. And the news isn't better for electricity consumers either. Even the UK Government's own estimates show that the costs for new nuclear power is £109 per megawatt hour compared to £38 and £44 per megawatt hour for onshore wind and offshore wind respectively. So new nuclear generation will increase bills. As we transition to clean energy system, we must ensure that as well as being clean, energy should enhance economic growth, be secure and affordable. And that's why we've been clear that the UK Government's intended investment in nuclear. I'm afraid I've taken too many interventions as it is. Scotland already has an enviable track record in renewable generation, covering onshore and offshore wind, solar and tidal. And I echo what the First Minister said in his speech on climate action at the Botanic Gardens last month, that Scotland's greatest contribution to the global climate challenge is our renewable energy potential, our technical expertise and our capacity for innovation. We're also pressing forward with our ambitious offshore wind targets, which will ensure Scotland is fuel secure well into the future and provide good quality jobs in energy for the long term. While we have an estimated pipeline of over 40 gigawatts of Scottish offshore wind capacity on top of the 3 gigawatts already operational, these projects are crucial to support our commitment to a just transition and will continue to affirm Scotland's position as a world leader in the energy sector. The energy transition is an era-defining economic opportunity for Scotland, with the potential to provide tens of thousands of good quality, sustainable green jobs right across the whole of the country. We are striving towards a clean energy system and growing our national economy, and I feel very strongly that we must do this in a way that supports the communities that host infrastructure. And despite much of this being reserved to the UK Government, we are taking action to make sure that communities see tangible benefits from Scotland's clean power revolution. I want to reflect on the decision before us to spend huge sums of money on nuclear, which will not reduce consumer bills and will leave us with environmental hazard extending thousands of years into the future, or we can continue to invest in renewables and Scotland's future. There is a unique opportunity at stake. We have an opportunity to reach our climate goals, provide cost-competitive energy security and grow our economy through the deployment of renewables and associated infrastructure. To repeat, renewable energy is safer, cheaper and faster to deploy and creates more jobs than nuclear generation. Therefore, I ask Parliament today to reject the creation of new nuclear power plants in Scotland and the risks they bring, and to agree that Scotland's future is a renewables powerhouse that benefits the people of Scotland, and I move the motion in my name.
There's a great deal to talk about, so I hope that the task of dismissing the argument for new nuclear is going to be the quick part of this speech. The Minister already mentioned cost, the massive upfront capital costs that have to be repaid over the operational lifetime mean that new nuclear will deliver energy at £109 per megawatt hour, compared with less than half of that, £44 for offshore wind, 41 for large-scale solar and just £38 for onshore wind. On timescales, we know that emission cuts are needed quickly, and we know that nuclear is slow to deliver. That goes for big projects like Hinkley C, announced in 2010 and unlikely to operate before the 2030s after vast cost overrun. But it's also true for the idea of small modular reactors, which some nuclear lobbyists have a current love affair with. With designs and prototypes in development for decades, they are still not delivering on a commercial scale anywhere in the world. And if SMRs ever do end up delivering on their long-promised advantages, those advantages will depend on deployment at scale, including through standardised design models and minimising on-site construction. So not great for the jobs argument that some of these advocates are relying on either. In short, the clean, secure, energy-efficient energy system that we need simply doesn't rely on nuclear. So let's look at where Scotland's advantages lie. We have a strong track record on renewables. Successive governments setting targets which many so-called experts dismissed, said renewables will never generate that much. Those targets were successively exceeded. We're now generating more in renewable electricity than the electricity we consume in some years. We have skills in oil and gas which can transfer to many new industries, including in areas like green hydrogen, if the government, both governments, are proactive, because we know that the oil and gas companies won't be. But Scotland also has many areas where we need to catch up on lost ground. We waste too much energy, and we still construct our buildings as though energy is cheap to use. There have been improvements in energy efficiency standards in new build, but this has to go further, and we have to start treating investment in the energy efficiency of existing buildings as a national strategic infrastructure priority. We rely too much on private ownership and not enough on public and community ownership. There's a strong case for an ambitious target for the amount of wholly community-owned renewable energy in Scotland, and priority access to land for community energy to make that target a reality. And the government must put support in place for community projects to access the capital that they need for repowering, and commercial repowering must also deliver community benefit, just as new build commercial wind should. And that's in addition to the need to learn from the best of Denmark's experience, building for 50 years heat networks and doing it for public benefit, not for private profit, and protecting their energy consumers. With communities owning their own heat infrastructure as well as renewable generating capacity, we don't need to replicate an energy system that extracts profit from people in fuel poverty. I don't have time, I'm afraid. We have an energy system still that is regulated as though for the 20th century. Renewable electricity is the cheapest power to generate. It should be the cheapest to consume. But the way the UK regulates the energy market artificially increases its price to consumers and acts as a barrier to people shifting away from fossil fuels for heat and transport. And we also finally have a gap between the political desire to be seen as climate leaders and the political courage to act. Despite our strong track record on renewables, there's been little to no progress on other sectors: land, buildings, transport, and now we see a series of delays. The Energy Strategy and Just Transition Plan. I've seen suggestions that the legal rulings on the unlawful approval of Rosebank and Jackdaw has some way led to the delay. That can only be the case if the government proposes to actually express positive support for those unlawfully approved developments. And as for the Heat and Buildings Bill, one of the most obvious areas where we don't just need to cut emissions, but to deploy systems that can use renewable electricity to displace fossil fuels, do so at scale and do so in a way that will cut people's bills. This was accelerating in the first 2 years of the current parliamentary session, and the bill was on track to introduce before the end of last year. Now it's absent with no explanation. Presiding Officer, in closing, renewables growth didn't happen by magic. Scotland was successful because successive governments gave clear and consistent signals to innovators, to investors, to the workforce and to policymakers that Scotland was serious about renewables. That's the clarity that we need on the clean heat sector, for building owners, for investors, for installers and those who train them, and for the businesses who are innovating in new systems. And the benefit in terms of jobs, reduced bills, emission cuts and energy security are there for the taking, but only if the Scottish Government ends the delay, commits to a truly ambitious agenda and puts that bill before Parliament now.